Good morning, friends. My name is Darren St. George, and welcome to another Monday morning program with Sal St. George. If you've been with us before, welcome back. It's always a pleasure to see you. If this is your first time, welcome to the party. This is how we start each and every week celebrating entertainment's leaders, legends, and icons. And this morning, we are certainly going to be talking about celebrating. We are heading to Mobile Carnival Museum in Mobile, Alabama, of course. Getting a private tour by their curator, Cartledge W. Blackwell III, is going to be with us. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear them. Please share them in the chat, and I'll happily relay those over to Sal. And speaking of Sal, let's get to the man of the hour. Sal, Dad, are you there? Hey, there we go.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We have a wonderful trip for us today, and let's get Cartledge right in here as quickly as possible because I
Sounds
know
good.
he's got a lot to show us.
All right, Cartledge, can you please, yep, there we go.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Wow, already.
I think you're muted, Cartledge.
Oh, there we go. All better now.
Okay.
Good morning. Great to be with y'all.
Yeah, Cartledge, how long have you been with the museum?
A little over 6.5 years I've been with the Carnival Association and the Mobile Carnival Museum.
And were you in the museum business prior to coming into this?
I worked for 9 years for the city of Mobile as head of their historic office. My background is in art, architectural history, and the decorative arts, so an allied field, so to speak.
Great. And what was the biggest surprise taking over this position?
To go from city government to the museum world was a delight because no one likes politics, but everybody loves a festival, and that's what
That's true.
it's a wonderful tradition which to be a part of celebrating.
Okay, and you're going to take us on a tour today. Where are you going to start us off?
I'm going to start y'all in the first galleries that visitors physically experience when they visit the Carnival Museum. We call it our Den Gallery, and I'm going to give y'all a little 360 of this space. It's located in a circa 1940s warehouse, and it is the first part of the Mobile Carnival Museum's 16 galleries that you experience when visiting the museum. The
Okay,
museum is
can we do that one more time, a little bit slower? This way we can see what you're showing us. There we go. Thank you.
And did I hear that correctly? 16 galleries?
16 galleries scattered on 6 levels of an 1872 house, the warehouse, a museum shop, and a theater space. So we pack in a lot.
That's
And what are
incredible.
we looking at? What is this, the large item that you're showing us right there?
This large item is one of multiple pieces that visitors get to experience. It's a float, one of 8 pieces of large-scale float sculpture by one of our 5 float makers. Literally hundreds of floats are made in Mobile each year for our 40-plus parades that happen in the 3 weeks leading up to Mardi Gras or Fat Tuesday. You can actually get the float. I've turned off the noise. There's a slight bounce to it when you get on it that simulates the feel of going down one of our old colonial streets, as if you were a masker yourself on a float.
Oh, that's fun. Cartilage, one of our followers just recommended, are you able to rotate your camera horizontally? The floats are just, yep, there we go.
There we
Now
go.
we can see it all in frame. That's great. Thank you, Marcy.
Good suggestion.
Yes. Wow. I love the fact that you recreate the feeling of movement on those city streets. That's fantastic.
Is
Carnival
your museum open right now?
It is very much open. We're open Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from 9 to 4. And when I last checked, we had a dozen visitors already visiting the museum, and we only open at 9 o'clock.
Wow. Good for you. And where are you getting your visitors from?
Internationally, to date, we have visitors from over 70 countries visiting the museum. We're the third largest tourist attraction in the city of Mobile.
Okay. All right. Let's see what's next.
All right, I'm going to take y'all behind the float. In this gallery, the Den Gallery, and it's so called because a den has a very special meaning in Carnival. It's a meeting space. Mobile is home to 80 area mystic societies or Mardi Gras groups, and they represent conservatively 60% of our population. half of our Mystic Societies parade, so give or take 40. We have displayed before you two sets of images, tops and bottom. The top is concept designs of floats, and the bottom is of those floats as they were realized in construction. These floats were always all designed by Steve Mussel for a group that always parades on the Thursday night before Mardi Gras. They're the Mystic Striper Society. Again, they're one of 40 area Mystic Societies. The reason why we chose to celebrate this particular parade of theirs from 2018 was they chose the theme of hidden ancestors. I'm zooming in on the emblem float, and every organization has an emblem. It appears in their float if they parade. It appears on invitations. Sometimes it's an actual individual who leads their parade or is at municipal events. The Mystic Stripers have two emblems, a zebra and a tiger, and it goes back to their founding. They were founded during the Great Depression, and they were a young men's group, and they had a guy who could handle literary themes because each parade tells a story and each organization picks their theme anew. They had another person who was very creative. He could work with his hands in building the paper mache floats. They were racking their heads how they were going to get costumes. And one of them raised his hands and said, guys, I got you covered. I'll get you some costumes. He happened to have the laundry business that did the laundry for the Alabama penal system. So for the first 10 years, they wore striped jailbird costumes. So that's why they chose the striped creatures. But if I'm going to zoom in on the theme, hidden ancestors, this is a history of Mardi Gras. So it gives you an account of Carnival in Mobile. Going back to our roots, we are the oldest place of a European settlement on the American Gulf Coast rim. We are the only city to be ruled by the French, the British, and the Spanish. We don't know what 18th century Carnival was like in Mobile, New Orleans, but we've got a depiction of the French fort, our founder, the fleur-de-lis of the Royal House of France. What we do know is that you jump forward into the American era, which stuff happened in 1813 here, that a group of young men to be having a very good time. They were on the river, and when there are four Mobile men on the river, there's a fifth, and his name is Jack Daniels. Among them was a Mr. Michael Kraft. And on New Year's Eve, 1830, he was having a wonderful time with his friends. He decided to take a little nap in the door to Partridge Hardware. When he was awoken New Year's Eve going into 1830 by a group of teenagers, he didn't miss a beat. He grabbed some cowbells and some rakes from the hardware store and did an impromptu parade. Over the course of the next year, he and his three buddies, along with several dozen friends, incorporated the Cowbellion Duracan Society, and they commissioned costumes from a Parisian opera house. They had floats of paper mache made that would be pulled by mules. And in November of that very year, they issued invitations to the inaugural Cowbellion Duracan Ball. The invitations were hand-delivered. A week in advance of their parade that had been announced in the papers, they gave lavish descriptions of the themes of this parade. And New Year's Eve, going into 1831, the template of American Carnival. No matter where you are, Pascagoula, St. Louis, New Orleans, Mobile was established. That is a Mystic Society, a crew, if you will, a Mardi Gras group, staging a parade according to a theme, and the theme changes each year. Members in mass to add a little bit of anonymity to their antics, and that theme translated in an invitation-only ball afterwards. This concept of the Mystic Society, now we have 80 of them in Mobile, over 300 in New Orleans, and this is kind of a timeline. You have the oldest active Mystic Society, the Stripers Independent Society with the goat. You have the Tea Drinkers Society. You have the Order of Men. Humor is a big part of Carnival here.
Cartlidge, did you say that you had that 60% of your population was involved with this?
Yeah. And Mobile has a very diverse population in terms of ethnicity and financial earnings. It's a huge part of our culture.
And it also brings together the whole community. It's really, yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a common denominator. If you look at the barricades in Mobile and New Orleans, the only cities in the world that get excited when we look like we've had a bomb threat, because we have the barricades up, we know a parade is coming. You have here the Infant Mystics, the Knights of Revelry, the Comic Cowboys. These are some of the many groups that we celebrate at the Mobile Carnival.
Oh, wait. Can we go back to that Christmas one? I'd like to see the actual
Christmas
float.
one is fascinating one. And again, these are called mystic societies. The official name of this organization is the Sacred Clan of Scarabs. They only released their name in the 1960s, and they were commonly known by their initials, SCS. And they gave a lavish ball in 1964 with the holiday thing. It bankrupted them almost. So the incoming president for the next year for the organization was a fiscally minded banker. So he told the guys, wear the costumes you wore last year. Let's jump forward to 2024. They wore the exact same costumes. And it was still not known what their real name was.
Yeah.
A local
Can you lower the camera
column,
a little bit so we can see? There we go.
Wonderful. A local columnist for the newspaper guessed that the name was the Santa Claus Society because they were wearing Santa Claus Society, when in actuality their name is the Sacred Clan of Scarabs. Again, one of our 80 groups.
Cartilage, are
And
you a
what
part
is
of any
this
of these
side?
groups?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Cartilage, are you a part of any of these groups? These secret
Yes,
societies?
Yes, I cannot tell you though, because that's a rule. You can't divulge what your membership. Yeah, I'm a member of an organization.
That's
You have
wonderful.
the Columbus here. They were founded in 1922, and a wonderful organization, traditionally Roman Catholic, now Catholic in a universal sense. They're one of our larger organizations. But to let you know who really mattered, since this was their parade, the Mystic Stripers with their jailbird costumes. So this display shows you the art behind it. We represent over 90 area active artists in our community that work in float sculpture, that work in paintings, that work in textiles. And the textiles are what we are known for. But in this gallery, we look at the street or the parade side of Carnival.
And how long does it take to build one of those floats?
That is a very good question. Carnival is an annual event, while Mardi Gras Day shifts according to the calendar. Is generally going to be late January through early March, and it takes a year to realize these. Within 2 weeks of a parade happening, floats are taken down. I'm going to zoom back to that large float, to their 2x4 and chicken wire structure. They have to remove 70, sometimes 80 layers of paper mache, gold and silver leaf. So it takes a year to realize these floats. A parade can be anywhere from a dozen to 3 dozen floats. And in between the floats are dance teams and bands, over 500 in high school and college bands from across the country, some from as far away as Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, perform in our parades each year. One thing that we could not do our wonderful parades and outside events without the civil service of the city of Mobile. Our police and fire crews are amazing. Fire trucks lead out and preclude every parade. We haven't had an incident in over 100 years, but you can imagine with 70, 80 layers of paper mache, they're highly flammable. Anyone who's ever attended a carnival event in Mobile or New Orleans know that at the end of a parade, you look around and beautiful Mobile and New Orleans have a lot of litter. That's when these fire trucks come in very handy. They hose the streets down. Scores of leaf blowers come in, and literally within 30 minutes of a parade, the city that had been trashed is pristine and looks like Disney World again.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. It's amazing. Truly scores of leaf blowers. It's something to behold. It's almost as exciting watching the cleanup as it is watching the big show of a parade. And parades are like outdoor Broadway. Think again, a dozen to 3 dozen floats that tell a story. You have the people on the floats. You have the bands with all sorts of music. You have a cross section of our community around you, plus visitors. The closer you get to Mardi Gras, the larger the parades. On Mardi Gras Day, literally you have 1 million to 2 million people on the streets.
Now, how many people are on a float typically?
It depends on the organization. Some of the larger groups might have 2 dozen. Some of the older, more moneyed groups just might have a dozen on their floats. It depends on the organization. Also, men's group and ladies groups. Generally, there are more ladies on a float than there are men. There are couples groups. There are children's groups. So literally, it is a multi-generational representation in the floats and the given groups. It's fascinating to watch. And that doesn't even cover the marching parades, which there are at least 100 of those. So those are on foot.
So this is a crazy question, but how many people are involved with the entire production? We're talking about a dozen floats, all the bands. How many people are in this entire event?
For a given parade, again, it varies on the membership. It can be several hundred to roughly 10,000 people. When you count the hands that made it to those that are on behalf of the city, with the fire trucks and the police crews, to the people who made the costumes, to the people on the float. And that doesn't even get into the family members and friends who are lining the streets to watch their loved one have a really good time, and then join in the revelry in some form or fashion after the parade.
Wow.
We're going to transition now from the den, this street side of Carnival, to the royal or court side. The most eye-catching aspect of the museum physically is the 1872 mansion which we're located. And that portion of the museum, the old house and the old service wing, houses what the museum is known for. Its wonderful collection of textiles, particularly one particular type of textile, the train. Not Thomas on the track, but the regal garment that follows a monarch. We have the world's largest collection of trains, exceeding that of the Victoria and Albert and the British Royal Collection. Each one of these is locally designed and made. They're a unique type of couture, really. I'm going to zoom in on this one here. And again, we have the world's largest collection of trains. What unites these trains are generally three things that are depicted on them: the crown, the initials of the monarch, which this one uniquely doesn't have, so I didn't pick the best one, and then storytelling. So think of these wonderful garments. I mean, they're physically worn, they move as medieval or Renaissance tapestries. They tell something of the monarch, they tell something of the family behind the monarch, how they tie to Mobile, how they tie to Carnival. And again, we have the world's largest collection. We have currently 9 active designers represented in these trains. We have over 200 in our collection. We prioritize the trains of 2 particular organizations in terms of display. And these organizations that we prioritize, the Mobile Carnival Association and the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association, are 2 of Mobile's 4 carnival associations. They're different from mystic societies. And while they stage parades, have big events, their events are more public. You can actually go to the coronations of their monarchs. The mystic societies, all 80, have royalty, but you have to be a guest or a member to see those coronations. The Mobile Carnival Association and the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Associations are 2 of those carnival associations. All 4 of them are booster groups. They celebrate Mobile. They're also debutante societies. And again, you can actually attend their events. I'm going to zoom in on this train from the 25th anniversary for the Mobile Carnival Association. It was worn by Mr. Guy Helmsing. It was made by Mr. Ron Barrett, a Renaissance man. And again, each one tells a story. Guy chose to reference family, and family is one of the themes which we celebrate at the Mobile Carnival Museum. Our interpretation is anchored in family, art, economics, and a good time. We could also add the sub-theme of humor. Guy focuses on family. You've got the family crest. He also used humor to kind of make fun of his family. The last name is Helmsing. They're Scandinavian of descent. And he chose to make fun of that through colors: silver, because it's chilly over there; blue, a seafaring nation. But also through a more hilarious dive. I'm going to show you a Viking helmet. Hogar the Horrible, the Viking helmet. When he wasn't wearing his beautiful crown, he was wearing the Viking helmet. So you got to have
You have to do that a lot slower so we can see it.
You've got the Hogar the Horrible, the Viking helmet that he was wearing when he was not wearing his beautiful crown, shown here.
Okay. And can we see the yeah, can we see the bottom of that train?
Yes, you see here the initials.
There we go.
You see a depiction of the crown up here. And then you've got the storytelling with the crest, the fish, the colors, and of course the Viking helmet. This gallery, the Tatum Gallery that we're in, is the transition from the street or parade side to the royal or court side. You see in this space objects or groups of artifacts that inform your visit. You have objects like the train. The train is part of an ensemble that we call the royal robes. If it's a king, it's the train with the costume, the crown, and the scepter. If it's a queen, like this over here, you've got a gown and the mantle or collar, the crown, and the scepter. I showed you earlier this one. This was the queen for that year of 1999. She anchored hers in faith. You see here the cross. Family is of French descent and were courtiers at the court of Napoleon and Napoleon III. So you've got the Napoleonic bees. Again, each one of these amazing textiles, these trains, tells a story. And this is the highlight of the museum for most visitors. Each one of these is locally designed and made. You asked the question earlier about the floats. These are made in even less time. Monarchs for mystic societies and carnival associations are picked in April. These huge textiles that sometimes can be longer than 24 feet in length are made between April and November.
And how much do they weigh approximately?
That is a very good question. King's trains, I'm going to give you ballpark figures, can be 50 to 80 pounds. Queens, with the exception of one, never more than 50 pounds. Juvenile monarchs, which are either 15 or 17-year-olds, about 30 to 40 pounds. Ladies of the court, and again, these are the additional ladies who are not monarchs, and there can be 30 or 40 of these ladies, weigh about 20 to 40 pounds. The weightiest one was, we'll see it a little later, was worn by a queen who was very diminutive in stature. She was less than 5 feet. She was incredibly petite, weighed barely 100 pounds. Her ensemble, her train, her gown, her collar weighed more than she did. So these are also engineering feats to pull these off. I'm going to get down on my hands and knees here and lift up one of the trains. Many of them, as you can see here, are lined at the bottom.
No, cartilage.
We couldn't see it.
Yeah, you have to tilt down a little bit. There you go.
Yep. With plastic at the bottom. That's to get them to move more smoothly, also protect the fabrics. That weighty train, the ensemble that weighed more than the young lady, had an additional step. It had over 87 to be exact, ball bearings to get it to move. So these things are works of art. They're engineering feats. They're narrative accounts of a family's love for Mobile and Carnival. And this is one of the many aspects that we showcase in the museum. And every single one of them is locally designed and made.
It's only worn one time, or is it?
It is worn for 4 events in the carnival season. And sometimes family members will reuse trains, like a nephew, a child. Debutante trains, the ladies of the court. I know one made in 1982 that has been redone every year since then. They take it down to the pallet, the base level of velvet and fur, and it is reworked to reflect the traditions and interest of another person. It's generally frowned on to change a monarch's train, though.
How many people work on them?
That's a very good question. We represent non-active designers. Some have a dozen people working for them. Some have as few as 2. There's one of our designers is named Ron Barrett. He did the 2 out there. He's been active in this field for 40 years. We have many works by Homer McClure. He started out in the business world and catering, and he has 6 ladies working with him. Miss Patricia Ann Richardson has about 6 people working for her. There's a wonderful group of 2 ladies, 2 good friends. One's an art historian. She designs. She works with the monarchs and their parents to come up with ideas. And her good friend, who is a licensed engineer, makes. It's as truly as if her works are like looking at a vehicle, their engine. They are so precisely cut and made, each piece fitting perfectly. So there are different approaches, and we represent the 9 most well-known and respected of designers.
Okay, can we move forward now and see what's next on your agenda?
All right, well, I'm showing here a cabinet that is peppered with artifacts. And Southerners, we love to show hospitality. Favors are traditionally given out after balls. Smoking devices have gone the way of the dodo bird, but drinking devices are very popular still. In addition to the crowns and scepters, you have pins. Pins are produced by Carnival royalty, mystic societies. I know one lady, she's our neighbor, that has been active in Carnival for almost 80 years. She has more pins than General Patton. This cabinet also has 2 wonderful photographs that represent tradition. Every year, the Kings of the Mobile Carnival Association and the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association arrive to the city of Mobile by way of boat. It's very symbolic because that's why we're here. That's why we were settled by the French, the British, and the Spanish, our wonderful port. We have become incredibly wealthy through cotton, through naval stores, timber. We remain port of call with the Cuban nation up until the Batista Revolution. We are now the largest port by ninth largest port in the nation by tonnage, predicted by Forbes magazine to be number 6 in less than 3 years' time. So it's symbolic that the kings of the 2 oldest carnival associations should arrive by water. Patriotism is a big part of Carnival. We have an upcoming exhibit looking at how Carnival has adapted to conflicts from the Mexican-American War through Vietnam. Carnival used to stop during wartime. It was only during the Korean War that it continued. That said, you have many patriotic observations. Members of the armed forces are special attendants to some of our monarchs. So again, tradition is big with thing. Patriotism is a big part of it. We're transitioning out of the old service wing of the house. But before we get into the grand mansion itself, I'm going to zoom in on another cabinet. This one focuses on Carnival and food. Every year, the Kings of the Carnival Association gather for a big schwanky meal at a local steakhouse. You can see they're all wearing the same tie. It's like a regimental or school tie, but the colors of Carnival. Purple, green, and gold representing faith, justice, and power, or shown here. You can see all of them are wearing it except for the incoming king. It is only after this photograph is taken that the incoming king is given the tie of the rest of the guys. His tie is ceremoniously cut by the sword you see here. I'm going to point up here to some of the ties that have been cut over the years. This meal is one of the many meals that pepper Carnival. And Mobile is, we love our food here. We love our Gulf Coast seafood, our wonderful meats, our wonderful vegetables. There's a bread basket around here. You can have menus written in French, and I've ordered, and I'm sadly not in, a very realistic chicken on a stick that's going to join this. You can have everything from street fare that you can smell being cooked while you're watching a parade, or wonderful meals that with menus written in French. A lot of people inquire about the museum building itself. It's an 1872 mansion facing our most famous street, Government Street. It was built by a wonderful couple, Friedrich and Augusta Bernstein. They arrived in this country in 1848 from Bavaria. Penniless, by 1872, they have built one of the largest houses in Mobile on one of the grandest streets, very philanthropic-minded. Among their descendants is the comedian Larry David. House later went through several private owners, later became a mortuary, was slated for demolition, and was saved as the History Museum of the City of Mobile. The Mobile Carnival Association moved in 2004. We bought the building in 2007 from the City of Mobile and have embarked on restoration and conservation work. We re-roofed the building, 5 new HVAC systems, and the exterior of the building will be restored next year. And interior work starts, such as the removal of the carpeting, very soon. So it's always a project having a historic home, but we love it. We're transitioning out of that old service wing into the main house itself. One of the glories of the museum is a collection of old lithographs. I'm going to spin around and give you a look at some of these. And they were commissioned by Mobile's Chamber of Commerce in the 1870s and 80s. And they're booster press at its best. They look very ratty. You can see creases. You can see writing coming through in some of them. They were intended
Just a little
to
cartilage, just
yes.
a little bit slower. It just takes a moment for the camera to focus first.
I'm going to focus on this one, Don. If you look at these, they are beautiful depictions of parades. The Chamber of Commerce hired artists to work with the older organizations to get basic sketches. The artist would do a rendering of the whole parade as if it was before you. And they had writers to do descriptions of them. Peppered into the descriptions of the floats would be descriptions of where you can stay, where you can eat. These were published months in advance of Carnival in cities such as Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, and they would say, you can come down here, you can see this wonderful spectacle, and Mobile's winter weather is so much better than your own. The parades haven't changed too much. While you don't have the German Relief Organization, You have the police and fire department. You have bands, again, 500 high school and college bands. Music is a huge part of Carnival. Again, these grand parades, over 40 in number, happen in the 3 weeks leading up to Mardi Gras Day. I'm now going to take you into one of 4 galleries that has an audio-visual presence. This gallery is one of 3 galleries dedicated to the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association, established in 1938. It is one of the 5 oldest traditionally African-American debutante societies in the Deep South. Every year, they stage the grandest event to happen in the state of Alabama, and that is recorded in the video before you, the coronation of the Queen of Mamga. The first African-American king of Carnival is right over here, Mr. Alex Herman. He was not only a major figure in Mobile Carnival history, but a leading figure in the Democratic Party, as well as a baseball fanatic. This is the man who discovered both Satchel Paige and Hank Aaron. Here at the museum, we tell through Carnival the history of Mobile, our past going back 300 years of recorded history. 2 trains are on display in this gallery. These are the 2003 monarchs of the Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association. King Alan Green, his train was made by Miss Patricia Ann Richardson. And if you Google Patricia Ann Richardson, you will see lots of interviews, some by BBC, The Times of London. Miss Pat's been interviewed by National Geographic. She's a true rock star. She's one of our most famous designers. She was one of the first African-American women to graduate from local Murphy High School. She was a professional nurse for 30 years, loved couture, loved fashion.
Partridge, can you go down slowly so we can see the bottoms of these? Thank you.
Yes.
And how much would one of these cost to be construct?
The one question we do not answer, since all of the pieces that are on display, 40 plus trains currently, each one of these people is living or has descendants. So we're good Southerners. We're not going to talk about the money. But you've got to think in terms of Miss Pat can have up to a dozen people working for her. She travels as far away as Dubai and India, sometimes to get materials. So it's labor, it's travel, it's design, it's however much money you so choose to put on it. Again, you can lessen the bill by reusing a family member's train or not changing things. But this is some wonderful example of Miss Pat's work. Next to it is a train done by Mr. Johnny Weaver. He taught art in the Mobile County public school systems for over 25 years. He can do anything you want. He is one of our train designers who truly does high-end couture. He's kind of like a local Dior or Yves Saint Laurent figure. This queen from 2003, Miss Ridgeland Pugh, had a huge interest in fashion. We have on display one of the gowns she wore. This gown is very unique. It was made for her by a friend. The friend was visiting her. They were college friends, and queens of the Carnival Association and Mobile Area Mardi Gras Association are generally in their final year of college. They were good friends, and she was visiting her friend Ridgeland and noticed a family album. And this was well before Mardi Gras, and it had newspaper clippings and family photographs showing 4 generations of Ridgeland's family enjoying Mardi Gras. She asked for permission, unbeknownst to Ridgeland, to make photographic copies that she then printed out and decoupaged on this gown as a special thing for her dear friend. And again, a huge part of Carnival is family. So this is 4 generations of photographs, newspaper clippings pertaining to one young lady's family. And she literally wore it on the prow of our battleship, shown right here, that USS Alabama. So you've got all of this family represented here, and that's what anchors Carnival in Mobile. Above the gown is a photograph of the first African-American queen of Carnival, Miss Eileen Jenkins, a major figure in Mobile education. She had a doctorate. She was the principal of more local schools, recently deceased, a true rock star in our community. Just showing you how one monarch, she had her moment in the sun, but she didn't peak upon being crowned. Just outside this gallery, you have a timeline showcasing just some of the many events that have informed Mobile Carnival history going back to the early 18th century. And it truly encompasses so much of our community and beyond. We have here a photograph of Miss Alexis Herman. Miss Alexis was the first woman of African American descent to have a major cabinet position. She was Secretary of Labor. You also have here a young man from 1940, a juvenile king, a 14-year-old.
You bring it down a little bit. There we go.
No,
No,
it's it's
we're
lower
not.
than you think. The lens a little bit, yeah.
You have here the museum building itself. Again, the Mobile Carnival Museum is one of only 2 museums in the world dedicated to Carnival. While we tell of international traditions, we focus on how it is celebrated here in Mobile. We're going into the formal rooms of the old Bernstein Bush House. And we're going into the Coronation Gallery of the Mobile Carnival Association. The Mobile Carnival Museum owns and operates this museum. It takes neither municipal, state, nor federal funds. It is entirely funded by its donor base. This is the Coronation Gallery. There's a video. The ceremony for the Mobile Carnival Association's coronation is the same for that of MAMGA's. Monarchs from 25 years ago, if they're still with us, 50 years ago walk out. Ladies of the court, king walks out, king crowns queen. You have juvenile attendants. There's a lady of the court here. These are the trains for the Carnival Association for this year. This is Will Slayton. You can see here he grew up on Mobile Bay, and you see the crab in the center. That shows one of his favorite childhood activities right there. The young queen grew up enjoying hunting with her father. You can see here some of the stars that she would look out at evening hunts. Carnival is a multi-generational experience. It involves youngsters, such as the serving girls, who serve salted pecans and nuts at balls. It's also a stuffed animal experience. It's the traditional of the kings of Mobile area Mardi Gras and MAMGA to give their queens stuffed animals. Will, who had the train with the crab on it, knew that his good friend and queen, Elizabeth, whose train you looked at, went to the University of Alabama, so he got her a stuffed animal elephant. So roll tide. He also surprised her. For her queen's luncheon, she had an English theme, so he gave her a little corgi. So she got 2 for the price of 1.
Cartledge, I have a question for you. It seems as though everything we're talking about is predicated on tradition, decades and decades of tradition. Do you find yourself having to alter any of these traditions as time changes?
There are alterations. Such, for instance, floats were pulled up into the 1960s by mules, and there was a city ordinance in 1968, I believe, that forbade the use of mules except for the emblem or the lead float. So now floats are pulled by mules. Also, while it is very tradition-driven, Carnival is constantly growing. There have been waves through our 300 years where it really grows, such as right before World War I, you have the founding of the first 3 women's groups. Now a third of our mystic societies are ladies' groups. There was a huge growth in African-American Carnival in the 1930s. You had a flowering of groups in the 1990s. In the past 5 years, you have had 8 organizations founded. So it's constantly growing with new traditions being established, but it does adapt to the times, to be it through technology with vehicles, to adaptations with costumes. So it's always innovation within tradition, if you will. This display looks at, it's called our Van Antwerp Gallery. We rotate our textiles constantly because we have so many. Also, light and air can lead to adverse conservation effects. So every 2 months, we change this gallery out. We change our galleries out constantly. There are 14 major galleries. We change them out at least once a year. Some galleries change out 4 times a year. And this gallery, we have the royal robes of Ben Ratcliffe. He chose, again, the theme of family. You've got the family shield, the family crest, the family motto, virtue above all else. Here. Next hit is a display highlighting family. You have the gown of a grandmother, her daughter, and her granddaughter. This is a photograph of the grandmother, Queen of the Carnival Association, 1967. This photograph appeared in National Geographic magazine in March of 1968. It was in an article entitled Mobile, Alabama Magic City in Motion. So Carnival sometimes is projected internationally. The Hall Gallery has pictures of 130 years of Mobile Carnival Association monarchs. Again, every monarch has their moment in the sun, but some have a far-reaching nature. Marian Acker McPherson was a major artist trained in Boston in the tradition of etching. She did more depictions of Mobile's historic architecture than any other. Martha Rogers Lyons was the first woman to receive instruction in landscape architecture at Harvard in the 1920s. We're now entering the old grand reception room or ballroom. This houses our thematic series of exhibits. We've looked at subjects such as Carnival and Couture, where we looked at over 100 years of fashion. We've looked at Carnival and Silver, Carnival and Bling, so Carnival and Jewelry. Currently, we have an exhibit called Carnival and Hospitality, the art of the invitation. We have in this gallery, over 300 invitations going back to 1854. We have them displayed according to 12 different themes. For instance, the theme is royalty. So it's invitations going back to 1913 for royal-related events through things created just this year. We chose this exhibit because most people, myself included, get magazines, bills in the mail, but to receive a beautiful invitation is something that sets the tone for an event, and they're a major part of Carnival. Again, these invitations are truly art forms. I received one a couple of years ago, a pink box. I opened it. There was another pink box, 2 envelopes, then a paper mache butterfly flew out. Gives you an idea of the elaborateness of these. This is Carnival beginnings. So these are some of the early groups shown here. I'm going to go further in this space, and you see one that is nature attuned. So how does your garden grow? And Mobile has famous gardens. Of course, humor is a big part of Carnival as well. We have a whole cabinet on Carnival and humor. Some groups, their names are humorous, like the 50 Funny Fellas. Others, such as the Knights of Revelry, choose a humorous themes. You have here, they chose Dirty Jobs. That show actually came to Mobile and did a whole segment on the antics of this organization. Of course, some invitations involve the creation of a work of art. Again, we represent currently over 80 active artists in our community. One of the older organizations, the Order of Myths, commissions a work of art each year. They've done so for over 20 years, and they've amassed a major collection of artwork depicting Carnival by leading Mobile artists that they're gracious in loaning us. You have the invitation and the work of art that inspired it. The performing arts are big. Mobile is home to the oldest band in continuous existence in the United States, the Excelsior Brass Band, always African-American, always male. Just the mention of the name Excelsior makes people happy. It's a subject of so many artistic depictions, and it is depicted on invitations as well. The next exhibit in this thematic series will be Carnival and War. And then we're switching gears and doing a focus on an annual event, the Camellia Ball, entitled Pretty in Pink. The ladies of that event wear pink. We will have over 200 gowns by local designers, as well as firms that are internationally known and makers such as Yves Saint Laurent and other featured designers.
Harlage, I just want to jump in. We have about 10 minutes or so left.
Okay, perfect.
So, yep, just to give you a ballpark.
We're going to go up to the top of the museum and then make our way down. We're going to walk past.
We have a question here, and it's very relevant. We've been to many museums, and one of the difficulties is keeping costumes from deteriorating.
Yes.
How do you handle the trains that you have on exhibit, and do you have others that are stored away?
That is a very good question. When I started working for the Carnival Association 7 years ago, we had a contract engaged with a textile conservator that was British born, trained at 3 British institutions. He does work for the Met, the Detroit Museum, so 2 major American museums that have great textiles. And he was asked three questions. One, are we storing the trains properly? That we were. Are we displaying them properly? That you are. He made the suggestion that we rotate more often because, again, I mentioned the light in the air. Ideally, we would have galleries where the light was more muted. We're going to be doing that. It's a very expensive thing to do. Ideally, we would have it where you walk into a gallery, the lights come on. When you leave, the lights go off. So we're doing two things very well. And now we're changing our policies to better conserve things with light, which is the main deterrent. He has done this wonderful conservator, wonderful work for us. We often ask when things are donated to us that they arrive in a condition that the family or the individual might want them to appear. So we try to pass the burden on politely to whoever is donating it. We have a huge offsite storage. Most museums have more storage space than they have display space. We have the delight of lots of display space, but limited storage on site. We have a huge off-site storage facility that is temperature controlled. We use the non-acidic boxes, certain types of approved plastic containers, proper types of tissues. So a good deal of the work that I do is in properly caring for things, particularly since these textiles, they can be incredibly fragile. I'll tell you this, older textiles often are easier to conserve and work with, even if they're deteriorated, because they were made with less synthetic dyes, more natural materials, better beading. So it varies. Very good question.
Also, if we have a lot of visitors here that would want to visit your museum, how long would you advise that they set aside to go through this?
The museum tours, we offer guided tours every day at 9:30 in the morning, 11, and 1:30 in the afternoon. They range from 45 minutes to about an hour, and that's counting questions. Some people, generally most folks, like to wander around afterward at their own. I always say factor in an hour. And with your price of admission, let's say you get here, you go on the tour, you want to break for a Bloody Mary, a good meal. You're our guest. Consider the museum your home while you're visiting here for the whole of our operating hours from 9 to 4. But do factor in an hour to get the full experience. The
Carlos,
gallery that
you've also introduced a number of groups that participate in the festivals. Are there any LGBTQ groups?
Yeah, there are 4 active LGBT groups, including the oldest active, the Order of Osiris. We passed one of their emblem costumes. They have 3 emblem costumes, including Horus. That was the Egyptian-looking costume there. The Order of Osiris had several spin-off groups, such as the Crew of Phoenix and the Order of Pan. The first LGBTQ identifying group was founded in the 1960s. It didn't last more than a decade, but you have 4 active now, and they are very much represented in the museum's galleries.
Thank you.
Again, there's something for everybody. It is a bonding component to our community, and it truly represents who we are. We have a special series upstairs called The Mystique of the Mystic, where we're doing a close look at each of our 80+ mystic societies. Currently, we have an exhibit on the Order of Polka Dots. They were one of the 2 first women's parading groups. They first started parading in 1950. We love this series because it shows the love to an organization. It celebrates them. It maybe reintroduces them to Mobilians. Everyone knows they're one of the 2 oldest ladies parading groups, but they might not know certain aspects of them. And since it's 2/3 of the way through your visit to the museum, people from farther afield now have an awareness of what a mystic society is, what Carnival is, it's a season, and what Mardi Gras is, it's a day, Fat Tuesday. And they have awareness of the themes that we represent here: art, economics, good time, a family affair. But most importantly, this series celebrates a group.
We have a question. What are some of the requirements that mystic societies require?
Again, there is that each one has their varying degrees. As I tell people, and I'm not a native born Mobilian, I wasn't conceived under an azalea bush. I tell people your people will find you. There are certain universal requirements. You have to be at least 21 years of age. All of them are dues. The parades, the city doesn't pay a thing for these events. Mystic societies, carnival associations, they pay for the overtime of the city staff, police, fire, leaf blowers, etc. So you've got to pay into the organization, and dues vary with the organization. So your people will find you. They have their own varying degrees of what they search out for. But again, 60% of our population, and that's a conservative estimate, are members of a mystic society. This gallery that is the final gallery in one's visit to the museum. We call it our Wow Gallery, or our Hall of Trains, and a selection of some of our most admired textiles. So this is where we end people in this experience. So they've, by this point, realized that trains are not just on tracks, and we truly try to wow them with this artistry. And we remind our visitors that they've experienced Mobile history from a French colonial fort to various degrees of what has made our port so successful. And they've experienced Carnival as an art form, an economic engine. It's truly an industry, a good time. Think of it as Halloween for all ages. You wear a costume and you you catch things thrown by people in costume. But we do hope that our visitors take away what we believe to be the most important part of Carnival, that it is a family affair. And that what makes Mobile's Carnival so special is that it is safe, it is family friendly. You have a good time, but it is safe and just a very joyous experience.
Well, beautiful pieces. Wow.
Well, those are two key words, tradition and family. You can't beat it.
All right. Well, oh, here we go. The question from Ellen: do the people who work on the floats, are they paid or volunteers?
Yes, they are paid. There are four principal float building firms that have dozens of people that earn a decent income from this. So their job descriptions that only exist in our Carnival world, such as float gilder or leafer, the structural people who work on floats, the textile artist. Of course, food is a huge part of Carnival. We have a thriving restaurant scene and catering business. So it truly is an industry. And you have families pitching in to help one another out in terms of smaller things, but there are definitely ways where it's the livelihood of people, and it's so creative, but so lucrative. The last economic study done of Carnival was done back in 2012 by the University of South Alabama's Business School. And it was determined that Carnival generated over $400 million for the city of Mobile's economy in less than 2 months. Half of that figure of 200 million was generated in the week leading up to Fat Tuesday. The larger 400 million for roughly 2 months was then a sixth of Alabama's annual tourism income. In 2012, we had the Great Recession going on. There is a new study, multi-year study that started last year that they're comparing data, and its economic impact has only grown. So it's definitely a huge part of our economy. And uniquely, we have, for a city of our size, we're the second largest city of the state of Alabama, so 250,000 people in our metropolitan area. We have the delight of a far larger number of artists and creative people than most cities of that size. And it goes into the people who are paid to do the floats, the trains, the food. It's a multifaceted art form.
Are there any special foods?
There are several types of foods, and they come in all forms. The most popular type throw, and that's no misnomer, it's what was thrown off the floats, is the moon pie. Chicken on a stick. I mean, there's a place that's opposite, sets us up a little carny wagon every year, and they haven't changed the grease out in 30 years. That's what makes it so good. Of course, we are known for our Gulf Coast seafood, so wonderful shrimp, Murder Point oysters. There is a wonderful place that serves a distinctive Mobile, New Orleans dish called the Dobosh cake. Mobile's is a rich chocolate velvety cake that is frosted, then ice, then with a praline on top. And they do a petit form version of this. So every food under the sun, we're a port town and have experienced the waves of immigration that have made this great country. So you have all sorts of great ethnic cuisines that animate our menus, but literally it's thrown off floats, bought in bakeries, wonderful things that families cook up and eat after parades, at homes, what they purchase at restaurants. So it's everything under the sun.
Just before we
Darren,
go,
I think we have,
can you
yeah,
zoom
I
in on
think
that
we have,
table just to see some of the setting?
Sure. This is a
Thank
setting from a supper, and King's
yeah.
suppers happen after the coronation each year. And this is an example of that. This was a Louis XIV theme for this one. And you've got the train and the costume next to it, literally with the sunburst of the Sun King as the center point of the train, as well as the scepter, which was a staffed version that you can see in the distance.
All right, let me show everybody now where they can learn more. And here we go. You can head over to mobilecarnivalmuseum.com. I've added this link into the chat. Feel free to go there with general operating hours. I already saw Ellen said she's nearby. She's going to have to make a trip. You can also support the museum. They have a gift shop, lots of ways to volunteer and donate. They're also on Facebook, of course, as well as on X. You can also follow along with all of our celebrity museums on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube as well. You can see some of our views. Our programs with John Davidson is up there, as well as on X. And what are we talking about today, Pop?
I was just showing some behind the scenes photos from Young Frankenstein. Yeah, we found it funny, but the cast was having a ball, as you can see.
I believe Gene Wilder, he was the troublemaker, right?
He was. He could not keep a straight face, and they had to do reshoot after reshoot. And Cloris Leachman got angry with him. Nothing serious, but she kept pleading with him, "Please don't laugh, Gene." So,
Oh, and one more question. How much do some of those trains, oh, we said the trains weight already. This was a question from earlier, but they can be up to 100 pounds, one of them. We have that. Next week, we're heading over to Bevan Bells. Been looking forward to this for quite some time. They are the manufacturers of the famous It's a Wonderful Life bell that's rung at the end of the movie. They're the ones still in operation who make it. And we have lots of other virtual road trips to the Museum of Puppetry, Alice Austin House. We're also going to be talking with Dan Bubeo about The Price is Right, Wheel of Fortune. We have Norman Lear, Rick Sapphire. New program here talking about The Twilight Zone with Jason Schwartz. So lots of fun things ahead. Cartledge, thank you so much for joining us today. A wonderful program.
Thank y'all for having us.
thank you, Cartledge. We really appreciate it. You showed us a part of the world that we were not aware of at all.
Mobile offers a lot. The Gulf Coast is a great region, and it's the home of American Carnival. So folks, come on down and see us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye, everybody. See you next time.